Hi everyone, welcome back to Unapologetically You. And last episode, it was a part one to this overthinking podcast. And we spoke ultimately about, in part one, what ways you can see and be aware of overthinking. So if you haven't checked out that podcast, head to the description box below and you can find that latest episode. And so today, this podcast is a bit more lighter. It's about finding the solutions, how we defined overthinking and reflected, and the ways we experienced it in our past. It was food for thought, but then now we get to talk about the solutions. So before we do, hit the subscribe button. If you're watching us on YouTube or listening on Spotify, be sure to follow us. We greatly appreciate your consistent support. Send this episode to a friend if you think they're going to find this useful. And don't forget, we would love your support on Patreon. Just for the price of a cup of coffee, you can find this link on how to support us in the description box below. So without further ado, welcome my beautiful and amazing co-host, Kelly. Hi, Kel.
It's always the most beautiful introduction. How are you?
It's because I prepare it and I overthink
it. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Look, I'm well. I'm good.
Yeah, good. All good with me. Yeah. What I found really interesting is we probably could have gone on for a lot longer in our last podcast, right? About overthinking. And I probably revealed way too much about my controlling tendencies.
Hey, you know what I think we revealed was the fact that we were overthinking our overthinking podcast. But there was just so much information available, and we will put this out, won't we, on Instagram and below in the links there on the information that we found as well. There was so much to talk about, and then so much about what that information, how that made us feel, what memories it brought back, and what projects we've got going now, which we both between us have quite a lot of projects going on. How we're overthinking those without really having previously labeled the fact that we were overthinking it.
Yeah. But at the time, we never identified it. And that's why I think the last podcast was really valuable, because you may think you're an overthinker, but it's only after looking back upon reflection. So currently in the situation, if you had listened to this podcast and maybe had a bit of an awakening like I did, even during the podcast, is going, well, actually, Kelly's laughing her head off right now.
Just zoned right out. I went, are you frozen? But she just had a revelation. So, yeah.
There was constant revelations for me, because it was like, even though I knew I was an overthinker at that time, I just overthought. That was my action, right? So I didn't think about procrastination. I didn't think about fear of failure. And now looking back on it, I think that podcast is valuable for people who are overthinking, is just to stop and just be aware of what's happening.
Yes, it does make a difference when you have that awareness about yourself and you go, well, that's the problem, because it's not really a problem, it's just a thing, and you can easily overcome it. It's not a course you have to do, not really. It's not education you have to get. It's not time you have to find. It's just do it. Just do it.
Yeah, imperfect action. I feel like because we're going to focus on the solutions on this one, what I didn't mention in the last podcast, and I'm going to sneak it in on this one, we didn't talk about insomnia. Insomnia is another sign of overthinking, because if you think about it, just you're laying there, right, in the middle of the night, or you're waking up in the wee hours of the morning, and I don't know about anybody else. I don't know about you, Cal. Everything, because it's so quiet, everything you could have done, everything you should do, everything you need to do, perhaps replaying the conversations in the way you maybe could have avoided conflict, arguments, disappointments, all of that is not only a sign of overthinking, but we often, I don't know, identify it to one thing. Oh, I'm only I'm up at night because we had this argument, or this had happened, or the situation is going on. We don't label it as overthinking. I don't know, put the onus on something else, someone else.
It's much easier to do that than to, admit your own shortcoming.
Have you overthought so much that you just lay in bed thinking about it?
Yes.
Tell me.
I'm just wondering who hasn't. But yeah, for sure. So it's been happening more recently. Like, it never happened before. I could sleep on a rock before, but now, even as it's coming to time to go to sleep, and especially if I have to get up early in the morning, which sometimes I do, oh man, I know I'm not going to be able to sleep, so I don't sleep, and so I'm overthinking. Should I stop eating now so that I can go to sleep with an empty tummy? Should I stop drinking now so I don't have to get up in the middle of the night? Should I do a really big exercise sesh today so that I'm really tired and I can't even think about it? I'm just so tired I go to sleep. And so there's me overthinking not being able to sleep even before I go to bed.
Wow.
I know.
So you're overthinking about getting the good quality of sleep before you have to tackle the long day ahead of you. Is that a good summary?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a better summary than my version.
No. I'm just processing. So what I found interesting, Cal, I just want to go back. This didn't happen to you before. You used to sleep like on anywhere.
I could sleep on a rock. I could have laid down on a rock and gone to sleep. I was just constantly tired.
The difference between then and now?
Older children. So young children is like, you are perpetually tired, always tired. I think having see, I don't have a 5-day-a-week job now. I do something 5 days a week, but it's not the same job 5 days a week. And I've gotten to the point where I've organised my time a little bit better so that some days I don't work every day. I can fit a few things in. But before, I was doing the same job 5 days a week, as well as other projects on the side. So I was tired. I was mentally and physically
rebuilding the house, all of these things.
And rebuilding the house, exactly. So I was tired in so many different ways. And fatigued is probably a better word. I had decision fatigue from all the different things we were thinking about with the house. I was physically fatigued, and I was definitely mentally fatigued. So I would go to bed and I would fall asleep as soon as my head hit the pillow. But now life's so much cruisier, and we do fun things like playful things for sports, and we'll drive up the coast and have dinner on the beach, just pack a picnic and have dinner. Yeah, you see, we do things like that. But it's not exhausting me. I'm not fatigued like I used to be. So maybe I just don't know what it's like to relax myself into a sleep. I just go from full on to fast asleep. And I haven't learned over so many years, I haven't learned to take myself down gear by gear by gear until I'm slowly ready for sleep. And we did a podcast on this, no electrical devices, no blue light, things like that. But I do it.
Oh, you do? Oh, your face. People are watching. You've got to watch this on YouTube, everyone. Like, these past 2 episodes have just been definitely YouTubeable. Oh my gosh, little guilt, that guilty face that overcame you after we've had a conversation. You were like, I didn't do it.
Yeah, I just went along with you saying all these wonderful things. I should do that. But I don't. And I need to. So, yeah, I go to sleep, or I get a bit anxious about, will I be able to sleep? And then, of course, you think, will I? Well, the answer is no. So I close my eyes, and you thinking about all the murders, when I close my eyes, I do the same thing. So if I'm watching a show that does have something like that, and I did watch How to Get Away with Murder, which is such a twist and turny type thing. You would, what's happening with this character? What can possibly happen? Yeah, and all the awful images, they come into my head as well. So I got to stop watching TV.
Especially ones that kind of reel you in.
Yeah,
and that's the effect of binging, right? Like, oh, let me just watch the next one. Let me just watch the next one. And I feel like I am getting better at being disciplined like that, because instead of pressing play on the next one, like I press pause during the middle of an episode. Like, people probably find this so weird about me. Like, the recent TV program that I'm watching right now, The Flight Attendant, is I don't wait till the end, until the anticipation, to wait until the next one. I'm like, right, this is like a bit of this is a bit of a boring, say, pause in the story. So before it goes a bit crazy, pause it now, and then I'll go to my routine. So like, then I'll brush my teeth, meditate, read, whatever it is.
I love it.
Because then you're not going to bed even going, oh, I wonder what happened to this one. Because that's what happened with me in season 1 of How to Get Away with Murder. I'm like, ooh, well, what happens to him? Maybe I should watch series 2 and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like,
you should.
I know I should. I'm probably going to wait for, because me and my mum watched it together because we both had COVID at the same time. So we both got into it, and she's a bit like, she'll just watch anything. But in terms of, she likes murder mysteries, like things she does, yeah. So she's more of a probably fan than I am. But I don't know what it is. I'm just like, why am I into all these murders right now? Like, what is it trying to teach me?
That's all that's on, though. That
Maybe.
And You Girl, which I'm watching bits and pieces of. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't. No.
Zoe Deschanel.
Oh, I've heard of it. Yes, I have heard of it. It's
just a fun show.
TV, yeah. I don't mind fun shows. I don't mind like lightheartedness, but I never get into. So I'm talking about all of this, but I never get into watching those dramas. Or I like action. Don't get me wrong. I like those types of things, but when it comes to like murder mysteries, like thrillers, horror, no. So this is what I'm like,
horror.
No, exactly. So this is what I'm just like, why am I interested in this right now?
Why would I?
So weird. Yeah. So yeah, I think going back to insomnia
back to solution.
Yeah, back to the solution. So I didn't talk about insomnia on the last podcast, on the first part, but now that we've talked about it now, for me, it was such a big thing, because when I was overthinking a lot, highly stressed, highly anxious, I wouldn't classify myself as depressed during that time, but I have been in bouts of depression, so I can kind of compare. So I could not switch off my brain, every time without fail, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. Well, 5 o'clock I'd be up anyway, but like 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, I'd just be wired, right? I just couldn't stop thinking about whatever was on my brain at that time. So what I did is go on YouTube and find chill out music. So find calming, like just chill Zen music, but something that was cyclical, because otherwise that would then trigger your brain, because now you're anticipating certain things in the song, right? So they couldn't have any vocals, they couldn't have any, big dramatic moments. And as soon as I pressed play to sleep, and then I'd wake up in the morning, the music would still go on. So there would be like 8 or 12 hours worth of music. And that the only way I could find that was on YouTube. So when I actually played that, what I found out is if the music kept playing, I would wake up, but I would try and mimic that same routine that I would go to bed to. I would try and mimic the routine to go back to sleep. This took months though. Like even now, I still go to bed, not so much playing music. I'll play music or I'll meditate before bed. So I'd fall asleep to something. And that's like 4 and a bit years on. So it's just like, you can have all the tools to meditate, but I guess like if you're not able to sit in that still state, or you're not able to meditate, like how do you shift those thoughts to another area instead of replaying those thoughts over and over and over again, and you're on that hamster wheel? What habits can you do? Like you can journal, you can read, you can do yoga. Like you were saying, I'll do some exercise before bed. You could talk to a loved one. And I think that if you can take out the thoughts, I envisage, for those of you Harry Potter fans, you're not gonna know, but like Dumbledore took his thoughts out and put it in a pensive. And it's like sometimes you just need to do that. You need to take your thoughts out either on paper or physical activity or talking, and process what you're feeling before you get to bed, maybe.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. All of those things, but what I have been doing and what does work for me is just breathing. And like you said, cyclical. So cyclical breathing.
Yes, that's a good one.
Also telling myself, it's actually okay if I don't go to sleep. And then I wake up in the morning. So I obviously do it.
Brilliant.
It's fine.
I love that you mentioned breathing, because I didn't even think of it for some reason. So yeah, that's really, really good. It's just like the cyclic, count to 4, exhale for 4, and just focus on that. And yeah, that could be your meditation. That could be a form of meditation, right?
And the mudras that you taught me.
Yes, and you taught me. We went through a series of mudras. I'm pretty sure that we recorded it, so it is on Patreon. So if you end up checking that out, like just going through mudras or mantras or mindfulness, I think that definitely hones in your focus, so you're not thinking about everything else.
It does, and it relaxes your, I believe it's your vagus nerve, which comes down here, down your throat, and wraps around your stomach and a lot of the organs around there. But when that's tight, there's tension in your body.
Yeah.
But relaxing the vagus nerve relaxes all of that. And it's easier to breathe for a start when all the nerves that wrap around your stomach are relaxed. And you do just sort of sink into a sense of relaxation. And then once you're relaxed, I think sleep does come.
Yeah.
I just got to learn to keep pushing those thoughts, or just, stay centered, stay in the now,
stay in the present.
In the now.
Stay
on target. I was just thinking Top Gun.
Oh, you were?
No. When he goes like stay, or is it Star Wars? When he's, don't worry.
I have no idea. It's like, it's gone past me.
Yeah, no.
I do need to watch Star Wars.
And starts wandering, and he's going, no, stay on target, stay on target.
I don't know. I do need to watch it. I've watched like sporadic ones, and like when my parents were watching, my dad was into it when we were younger. My brother loves all of the sci-fi stuff, but I've not really gotten into Star Wars, so I definitely need to like watch the whole thing. But now there's like TV series and all sorts of things.
Oh, you don't need to watch all of that. But the original movies or the original series are pretty, they're old now, but they're just iconic. Black ball next to your name. You haven't seen Star Wars series. That's incredible.
It's on the list, okay? It's on the list. But I wanted to go back to, you were talking about relaxing the body. And I didn't mention this in our first podcast. So again, this is really good because we're bringing more and more things into the second one. In previous podcasts, we were talking about stressors, how stress manifests into symptoms around your body, right? Physical manifestations of pain or stress. So I didn't know that overthinkers are prone to headaches and stiff muscles and joints, which now seems quite obvious, right? So if we're concentrating too much, we're stressing too much, for me in particular, is it your jaw for you?
No, I'm just saying, I know it is for me, but for a lot of people, like you grit your teeth, hold your jaw rigid.
That's a good one. Yeah, for sure. And I feel like for me, it was more about my eyes. Like my eyes would start twitching, or my forehead starts to ache, and then it was really weird. Like I only thought about this, obviously in preparation for the podcast, is I used to experience so many headaches as a kid. Like as a child, I used to get loads of headaches, and I couldn't really pin it down to any one thing. And I did seek medical advice for it. I just got laughed at the doctor. So I just never went and asked for medical attention regarding that. So that traumatized me, obviously. But I think for me, I didn't know it was down to my overthinking until now processing it. So it's like having that negative thought pattern on a loop is so friggin' draining. But the last thing that we look at is negative symptoms on a physical sense.
Yeah.
Because we've already think, oh, we've got a headache, or now I'm overthinking about my headache. Just as you said earlier, muscle tension around the jaw, the neck, the shoulders, the stomach. As soon as you start to relax, well, then that can actually help you sleep anyway, right? It can help you overcome overthinking. But I think for me, actually, breathing does come into it. You talked about breathing earlier, but how do we increase oxygen around our system? Take full deep breaths in. How do we encourage, taking diaphragmatic breaths or a breath through the belly? Like, people don't do that this day and age. Or it could even mean doing some stretches or gentle mobility exercises before bed. Like, fitting in the brain and the body. I think we forget. We're like, oh, this is the brain, this is the body. Like, it's so interlinked, and we need to kind of go back to listening to our intuition, right? Going back to, okay, what is our body telling us? What is our brain masking us from uncovering, unleashing? But of course, obviously, guys, if you've got medical issues, please, we're not medical practitioners. We're not giving you advice just to breathe through it. Do check it out, right? God, no. Go see a physician or a doctor.
Yeah.
But what were you going to say, Cal?
I don't know. I was just saying, yes, we're not medical practitioners. Do go and see a doctor. I think that's what I was going to say. Or was I going to say?
So we're just talking about the brain and the body and overthinking and our intuition.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so more solutions. How do we get more solutions? On the last podcast, we talked about what were we talking about? It was really hard to overcome living in fear. So if you...
Yeah.
So, okay, so for me... I was an overthinker because I kept thinking about the past or the future. Like, oh my gosh, I was just an expert at thinking about the past or the future or potential future. So it took so much work and effort to start living in the now, moment by moment, having controlling tendencies, having overly compulsive qualities, I want to say. But then I used to overthink that. And then beyond my control, that would leave me stuck. So for me... obviously listening to music before bed definitely helped quieten my thoughts so I can get to sleep, so I can make better decisions, so I can be clear in terms of my judgments about certain things. But meditation definitely was the solution for me to stay present. And it doesn't necessarily have to be meditation for everyone. It could just mean being present, reading, coloring, playing an instrument, journaling, mindfulness. Anything that brings you into the moment and stops you thinking about the past or the present.
Yeah. Coloring is a big thing in the last few years, isn't it?
Yes.
I do enjoy doing that too. Like, if there's something on a table, or a jigsaw puzzle, I love jigsaw puzzles.
Yes, because you're so ingrained in that moment.
Yeah. I think anything that makes you forget you're hungry is living in the now. To me, that would be my definition of, I know I'm living moment by moment when I forget that I'm hungry. So I'm not thinking about when I'm going to eat or what I have to make or what I have got available. Do I have to go and buy something to make this thing? If I forget that I've done something through a meal time, then I'm living in the now.
Oh, I like that. But what I found is when I'm in the flow. So flow and living in the now is definitely hand in hand, because I don't know about you, but when you're in the flow of something, you're not looking at the time. It's like you're in this other dimension where time just is irrelevant. And then all of a sudden it's like 3 hours later and you're starving and you're like, what?
I know. Yeah, exactly. So I like that. That's a beautiful word. You're in flow. Yep.
Yeah.
I would say
we need to be in the moment and in the flow.
The moment in the flow.
Yeah. And then that gives us better decision making abilities, right? We're full of oxygen, we're breathing correctly, we're we're making good judgments, we're in the present moment. But I feel like when we spoke about last podcast, it was about second guessing ourselves, wasn't it? Second guessing ourselves, but putting yourself in an environment where you can trust yourself more. How do we cultivate that? How do we learn to trust our gut more?
Can I ask you, when you said in the last podcast, one of the characters in the show you're watching said, this is the evidence and it doesn't show that this person's, involved in the murder at all, but I have a gut feeling and I'm going to follow it. Was that a female or a male character?
It was a female character. So it was the male character who had the evidence to convict this woman. And the woman, the FBI agent, said, no, there's something off. I'm going to follow my instinct.
Yeah. I feel like that's a very feminine trait. So in order
That's why I said it was a superpower. That's why I said it was a superpower. Yeah. We need to cultivate this. But the majority of overthinkers are women. Like, come on, let's bring it back to our superpower.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. But I think being in an environment that is probably a feminine environment would cultivate the opportunity to use intuition more than it would in a logical, scientific, everything is assessed and measured kind of environment, which is a more masculine environment.
Yeah.
So how do you build a culture that allows you to use your intuition? I think the easiest way is to make it a feminine environment. And that doesn't mean there's no men. It just means the feminine environment. So I don't know. That's one way. That's what came to my mind. What about you?
I like that actually that you mentioned about the environment. So it's definitely in terms of how can you be more yourself. And if you don't know who yourself is, that's, one thing to investigate and delve deeper into, but also ways that you can enhance those qualities. As I said in the last podcast, I lost trust in myself. I lost my intuitiveness. And in the last couple of years, I've definitely cultivated that to another level now. Like now I'll get to a point where I'll just ask myself, where do you want to walk? What do you want to do? And I've kind of carved out time in my diary. I'm ensuring I've got white space in my diary. Like before there was just no white space. Like I was very controlling every area. And now I'm like, okay, well, leave the white space for play. I want to introduce more play in my environment, but also that goes hand in hand with trusting my gut. Every time I say to myself, well, which direction do you want to walk in? What new experiences do you want to uncover? It's led
So do you ask yourself these things? Do you ask yourself that question? I love it.
I do.
And then you answer it as if it's someone else asking you.
No, well, basically I'll say, I'll actually ask myself in my head, like, which route do you want to go? And then I have this feeling, and then that will take me to the route. I then experience, and I'm in this moment of, like, this had happened to me the other day, actually, a few days ago. And this took me to this new route. And I was like, oh, this is really exciting. Oh, this is really good. And I have not seen this before. And I'm sure that would have happened if I took the other route because they were both new routes. But then for some reason, I made a loop on myself. And bearing in mind, I've not been to this area before. So I made a loop on myself and I was like, oh, okay, I don't know where I am right now. But oh my gosh, the British countryside cottages, the area that I was in, it was really gorgeous. I was like, this is like heavenly. This is beautiful. And then obviously I had to whip out my phone and go, okay, where is my car in reference to where I am? All right, I know where I am. Okay, I kind of need to take this trajectory, but I still diverged. And I feel like what I'm trying to say is that's taken such a long time over the last couple of years for me to do that, to trust my intuition and situations. But I'm putting myself in a fairly safe environment, fairly safe situation, and I'm testing the waters. So I'm not going out, I'm not walking down a dark alley, for example, right? I'm not going, yeah, this doesn't feel good, I'm going to do it anyway because my intuition tells me to. No. Like, put yourself in a safe environment, test the waters, and then see how you feel because of that. And then that, just like a muscle, gets stronger.
Yeah. Sometimes you can feel want to do something, but it produces anxiety.
That's what I mean. You need to go past that anxiety. And I think that overthinking, what we talked about last podcast, is debilitating. So all you need to do is then overcome that debilitating moment, that freeze, paralyzing moment, to just take that imperfect action. So that feels safe. So that feels okay. But you can't then go, oh, I'm going to do this new thing entirely, because then it could lead to way more anxiety than, and you're never going to do it again then.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like me with my scuba diving, as an example. I didn't think I'd want to do it again, but since then I have been out with someone I trust, so much, and is very caring and loving and loves me. So, that has all made a difference to the way I was taught, which was holy heck anxiety producing for me.
Yeah.
And not a fun experience. And I just went, I don't like this at all. And, but anyway, like you said, it was just all too new, all too much, not with someone I felt comfortable with. And since then, I've just, had my hand held, and I love it.
No, but that's the thing. It's like you've got this new experience, this new skill, this expertise. You're in an unfamiliar environment. Those are big overloads for your sensory system. Like your nervous system is like, what the F right now? So what can you control about that? You couldn't. And then all of a sudden it turned out into a bad experience. So what made you, before you actually made the decision to go, right, I'm not doing this ever again, to actually, let's try it? Because that's imperfect action, because you didn't know how the outcome would fare.
Yeah. I think I am competitive. I do enjoy a challenge. And I was there, I was in the water, and I had the opportunity to say, F it, I'm out of here. I'm going out right now. Or, and just have my hand held and go, we're going to do this together.
Oh,
and you're going
to
be fine. Yeah, you're going to be fine, because I'm here and I will never let anything happen to you.
So you had the trust and control in somebody else, the control that they had, the trust that you had in them enabled you to take that action.
Yes.
So you had that sense of safety, security.
I did. That was the tipping point, but also I didn't want to give up. So that was my first step. I don't want to give up. And then my second step was, yes, I do. And my third step was, no, I don't. My fourth one is, yes, I do. And then, And then it was like, hold my hands, we're going to breathe together, just look at me, look in my eyes, and I will never let anything hurt you. And that's just, right?
I love
Have you ever cried underwater?
I know. Are these just wet tears, or is this just the water?
Yeah, I know. But that's what it was like for me. And so what was your question about, overthinking something to the point where you're anxious about it, and then how did I overcome it? Yeah, that was it. Having that person who was an expert at it.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
I love that. I love that story, because it's the classic example. It's such a good story, because it's that classic example of how to overcome overthinking. And now you're in a whole new experience. You've got so many more adventures, so many more stories that you can then explore. Yeah, it's just brilliant. And also I feel like the competitiveness, the having the support network, the support, the coach that you had. And did fear of failure ever come back into it? Did you ever think, in your overthinking, did you ever think, oh, this might be the same experience? Or did you just not, you push past the fear of failure at that point?
I didn't think, when you fail with scuba diving, it's a pretty bad fail. So, things could go terribly, terribly wrong. But I never went there. So I never thought that very bad things could happen except maybe a shark. But
I love how you add that overthinking in right at the end. Your face, you're like, it's oh my God, a shark.
I know. Well, I was talking to our builder the other day, and he was going to do a triathlon down in Kingscliff. We love our builder. And he said he was going to do it in the creek, but it was a bit murky. Anyway, the whole thing was cancelled. Blah, blah, blah. And then someone saw a 4-metre shark out in the sandbanks. And I said, Sam, did you know that, someone spotted a 4-metre shark? And he goes, oh, my God. He goes, I would just faint. And I went, oh, snakes and sharks are my 2 biggest fears. He goes, me too. So me and our 30-year-old builder having, discussions about how we'd faint if we saw a snake. Or a shark. But the thing is, sharks are a reality. So that's why I added it in. I'm like, I felt safe, and I knew, well, I didn't go to the nth, were bad things going to happen? And then I went, well, I did think about sharks. So, but they're a real thing. Like, yeah, it really could happen here. Yeah.
But I think like the next one, it could be like overcoming that fear and actually being in a safe environment where there aren't, like, I don't want to say bad sharks, like threatening sharks, like could be baby sharks or something like that.
Yes, you can go to a shark nursery, and we have, but sharks attack from the underneath. So what you do is you dive in under it. So you're under them looking up, which is amazing, because a shark nursery just has sharks circling.
Oh my God, that's insane. So have you seen a shark while you were diving?
Only when we intended to. No surprise sharks.
Oh, wow. Oh, you surprise me all the time. I do want to dive, but then the ears, the actual equalizing, what do they call? Is it equalizing? That throws me. I did free diving in Bali a couple of years ago, and it just, I couldn't. Yeah, I got to about.
It's hard.
It is tough. I did get to. Oh, I can't even remember in meters wise. We were supposed to do 25 meters.
Holy cow.
I think I got to about 10.
Yeah.
Which isn't too bad. But then he was like, go to 15, go to 20. And I was like, I just couldn't. It just kept. I felt like my brain was going to explode at that point. Because you
feel the same way.
Yeah. And that definitely, you need to have control of that when you're diving, right?
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah. I mean, it was a good, fun skill to do, because I was like, competitiveness. How long can I hold my breath for? That was me all over. Just how long can I hold my breath for? Okay, so last one, Cal. Last episode, we spoke about fear of failure. And I really, really liked the solution to the fear of failure, because the person who's overthinks so much, it paralyzes them. But how do you navigate the fear of failure? You take bite-size, imperfect action. But it's not easy when you're being so hard on yourself or you're overthinking. So instead of fearing the failure or the aspect of it and then not trying because it becomes debilitating, how can we shift our perspective of failure? So I had written a post on Fitness Chicks. It was a couple of weeks ago, actually. And I remember saying something like, you're a queen. If you fail all the time, to have success, you need to have failure. So failure and success go hand in hand. There is no one thing out without the other. And within that description, I put failure is learning. It's growing. It's expansion. Failure is movement. Failure eradicates procrastination. It is imperfect action. It's vision enhancing. It's greatness. It's trying. It's progress. It's questioning. It's a prerequisite for business. So instead of looking at failure, and I remember in that last podcast I was talking about, I don't want to make a picture. I don't want to create something in case it doesn't pan out with my vision of Picasso in my head. Well, actually, let's just try it out anyway. And taking the imperfect action, actually putting, the paintbrush to the paint, seeing the progress, seeing the trials and error, looking at something going, that didn't really work out. How do I solve it? None of that was failure. That was trying. but it's still
learning.
failure.
Yeah.
I'm learning. Exactly. So instead of going, I'm fearing failing because I'm not going to look like Picasso, how do I keep failing in the most positive way? Failing forward, they say, right? You're failing with progress.
Yeah. Well, if you had made a Picasso, it would have just been a copy of someone else's work anyway. So that wouldn't have been.
It wouldn't have been mine.
Or authentically you. Yeah, exactly. And I was going to say something else. That's what. Failure is a tag. It's a word. You can call it that if you want, but you can call it whatever you like. You can reframe things if it makes you feel better. But if it spurs you on to call it a failure, then call it a failure. You know, some people are really spurred on by someone saying that was a failure. I wouldn't be. But that's not my personality.
Just cry in your pillow for days.
Yeah, absolutely. I am definitely one who wants to live in the light with unicorns around me, you know.
Me too. I'm there with you. I'm in your vision.
Yeah, it's a nice existence. But some people really are spurred on by failure or by someone challenging them or telling them they can't do it. Whereas if someone says you can't do that, I go, oh, you're right.
But saying that, I did get the conversation. I remember the conversation. This doesn't happen very often, and I'm so glad it doesn't happen very often. But I remember going for my strength. I just was completing my master's in strength and conditioning, and a lecturer, stroke business owner, had said, don't bother going for strength and conditioning. Don't bother going for your UKSEA accreditation. It's just so tough to actually even get it and then get a job after. So what did I do? Make that my mission. And now that's my story. If somebody told me, don't bother, it's not worth it. Even the best practitioners in the field are finding it difficult to get a full-time position. And I was like, no, that's not my story. That's your story. And I get that you're giving me advice, but that literally just spurred me on. That spurred me on so much to be, you know, one of the few females in Wales to get the UKSEA accreditation, one of the few females to work in strength and conditioning. And I know that there's more females working in the industry, if you don't do it, who will? Because then you're paving the way for the next person. And, you know, people who don't look like you to be an influencer, an inspiration, just means more women can actually overcome their own fears or their own barriers.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's true. And I'm glad you did it. And it was good for you to do that. And it did give you a good, it's a foothold, I guess, even if it didn't give you and it may have given you the exact result you wanted, but even if it didn't, it's a foothold to something else, isn't it?
Yeah, because wouldn't have that's a case of regret. People won't regret what they did. They always regret what they didn't do or they didn't try.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah.
Right? So just, don't live in regret. Just try it. And then even if you fail in inverted commas, it's not a failure because in this experience, and now you've got another story.
Yeah. Can I tell you my version of that story?
Yeah.
When I was at uni doing law, I wanted to be a litigator, Ally McBeal style, you know. Like, have you heard her, like, in the courtroom? She's awesome. And anyway, I wanted to be an Ally McBeal litigator. But truly, not many women were litigators or even are litigators now. It's a career, and it's not a career that you can be a mother for, usually. Okay. I mean, I'm sure some people have achieved that, but there's always compensations to be made. Anyway, my what was my professor's name? There was Honey Benson, and anyway, I can't remember his name. It's just escaped me right now. He said to me 3 years in, he said to me, I love your work. You are passing everything with distinction. And I was, because I took a lot of pleasure and joy and pride in the work I submitted, but my personality, as you can probably tell me, I'm not a hardcore terrier litigator. He said, you're going to be the lawyer that takes on pro bono cases. He said, you have the most beautiful heart of anyone I've ever worked with. And I went, I do not, I will so. And for another year I tried, and he was right. He was right. So that advice came from a very genuine place with him. And I should have listened to that advice, yeah. So I had an extra, 100 grand worth of HECS to pay because I tried to prove him wrong. But he was right.
I love that. I'm not the nicest person ever. I'll prove you wrong.
I know. I know, but that's 19 for you or 20, whatever I was. And, you just have a vision of what all this study is going to end up like. And he was just so, it would have been a hard conversation for him to and say that to me. So I recognize now, and even then I did to a degree because we got on very, very well. Just such a lovely man. But, but right now I really do recognize that it came from a very genuine, very heartfelt place. And I should have gone, yeah, I actually.
So how long did you actually go, all right, that makes sense now. Maybe I shouldn't go down this route? Because obviously you did shift routes, but taking that route, how long did it take you to overcome that and take his advice kind of thing?
Oh, so an extra 12 months on top of that, until I moved into an education space, which back in the day was called human movement. So it wasn't called exercise and sports science back then. Yeah. It's called human movement. And it came together with a teaching degree. So that's where I moved. But look, I have to say, I don't regret studying all those years doing law and thinking I was going to be one thing and then working out that I really, really, really wasn't the personality that needed to be that. And the people who were doing well at it were people that I couldn't find common ground with. So maybe that should have been,
that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, we just didn't have common ground on very many of our values or any of our values.
I love that values and morals come back into our conversation, because obviously we spoke about it in so many different podcasts, but, being true to who you are, being authentic to you and trusting yourself more. I feel like that is the theme of these last two podcasts of, how can you take imperfect action? How can you trust yourself more and show yourself a little bit more compassion? Like, you don't need to overanalyze or overthink things. How can you bring yourself back to the moment? How can you be in your physical body? Sometimes just being, breathing, tuning yourself to your heartbeat, that brings you and centers you back to this present moment, because right here is where new experiences are formed, right? These are where new memories are formed. So the more you're in that present state, the more you're going to remember this in your long-term memory, because you're in the feeling, you're in the emotion, you're in the moment.
Yeah. And like you said, you're making new memories, or you're erasing, I guess, old patterns, because usually when you're not in the moment, when you're not feeling your heartbeat or understanding how you're feeling, asking yourself how you're feeling, your future can only be your past, because that's all you know. You're not erasing your previous responses to everything. You're just making your previous responses your new responses or your future responses.
Yeah.
But yet that centering and going, how do I feel right now? I love your thing. How do you feel? How are you today?
Trusting yourself more. Yeah, I'm just like, well, what would my higher self do? It could be your future self. It could be, who do you want to aspire to? What does she drink? What does she dress like? How does she feel?
Yeah.
And she's an empress. She's a queen. So I'm like, yeah, I want to be like her.
They are. So, I have, imagine everything about me would have to change.
Why?
Because remember you said, what does she look like? I said, she looks like Zendaya.
Oh, she looks like Zendaya. I missed that bit. Yes, but Zendaya is perfect as Zendaya. Kelly is perfect as Kelly.
Yes, I am. Yes. Zendaya could not do what I do.
Exactly.
But,
you've got that commonality because you're both good people. Like some of the interviews that she's done and some of the insights and the wisdom that she shows, I'm like, she's a good
it's
egg.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, she does seem like a good egg too, doesn't she?
Yeah. She would want to be friends with us, for sure.
Oh.
So if we're listening to our millions of fans.
yeah, pass it on to
Oh, Cal, it's been such a joy to speak to you about something that we've both been a part of, right? We've both had throughout our lifetime.
I think everyone will relate to this one.
For sure. And it's been so good to actually come up with solutions because obviously we've both overcome it, but it's like it's a constant evolution of it. It's not a case of, I'm done with that now. It's like if you've got a history of anxiety, stress, or depression, it's never a case of you're over it now. It's like, what can you do in this moment today that can help you in your future? Just as you said, you know, the decisions you are making right now is bringing you to the future that you aspire to be in. So create more of those positive moments. And I think that's a great time to leave it. What do you think, Cal?
Yeah, no, I feel good. So I think it is as well. So you look after yourself. Please look after yourself.
You too. I'm taking it step by step. I'm taking my own advice of what I would say to my clients. So you take care of yourself too, and I'll see you on the next one.
All right, sweetie. Bye.
Bye. Guys, remember to click subscribe if you're not already on YouTube and on Spotify. And if you'd like to support us, hit us up on Patreon, where you can, only for a price of a small cup of coffee, support us. We would really, really appreciate you. And thank you so much for listening. And thank you so much for coming back. And we'll see you and speak to you on the next one.